Welcome back to Tech Garage, presented by Advance Auto Parts. Well, we got our project RSX Resurrection back in the shop, and let me tell you, driving it in here was a dream. Brian did a great job on those brakes, man. Those drills and solid rotors really did the job. It's stopping great. Now it's time to address the actual engine and our fuel systems, and oh boy, this is going to need a little help. I mean, you can see right here some of the grease and some of the things that's going on. We'll go ahead and upgrade the fuel system. We'll start with the injectors here, and that's an important piece of the car because the fuel has to get into the engine, and in the future I probably see some headers and exhaust going on it. Now Brian's got his hands full, but he's going to go ahead and get started on these injectors. And while he does, let's take a look at some injectors and some tests that will help you even out in the driveway. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and start up the system. And when I start up the system, you can actually see here, the injectors are pulsing. The computer's telling them to pulse, fuel's flowing through them, but this one, not so much. So what's going on here is what we suspect is probably going on with our Acura because of the fuel tank and everything else. It's gonna not spray too well. Now, a good illustration of that is you can see on the graphic, the far left of the screen is a good spray pattern. As you go through the middle of the screen, well, they're offset. They're not spraying too well. And the last one there is just dripping. It's not working at all. We can look at a couple of tests. The first one's real simple. You can just check it for ohms of resistance. You got a DVOM. You can go out right in your driveway and do this. I'm just going to go ahead and unplug these injectors and spin them around so you can see what we're doing. And we're just simply going to go across them. There's a wire windings in here, and they have an ohmic value. So we can go across there, and you can actually see the meter. This one's running about 12.6 ohms of resistance, and this one's running about 12.6, 12.5. Well, that doesn't explain the spraying not good, so we're gonna have to take it a little bit further. Check your service manual. Every injector is a little bit different. But see, we can run a flow test. That's pretty cool because we can actually see if the fuel is going through there or not. When I put my fuel gauge up here, I connected it to the Schrader valve. And when I connect it to the Schrader valve, it's actually reading fuel pressure. Now I can turn it on, I can take the fuel pressure all the way up, and then it's gonna sit still. What I have here is a computer simulator. The simulator is actually gonna simulate the computer and pulse the injector. Now watch this, I'm gonna put it on this injector. You may hear it pulse a little bit, but watch the gauge. When I push the button and I hit it, it's pulsing, and the gauge just barely moved. Well, what does that tell me? Sit tight a minute. I'm gonna go to the next one. When I go to the next one, I'm gonna go ahead. You wanna bring it back up to every one of them, back to the same spot. Now, watch the difference. When I push this one, see that gauge drop? Well, that's the fuel pressure dropping. Why? It went through the injector and into the engine. So you can go through each one of the injectors and run that flow test. Now, I suspect our RSX, it has some injector problems. I'm sure Brian's tackling it right now.
Well, sure enough, we have our fuel rail just about off on the RSX. Two mounting bolts here on the front, very simple to deal with. There's a grounding strap back here. There's a bracket bolt, it's out. That's just for the linkage cables. That's out. Now, you have to disconnect the electrical connector at each fuel injector. Twin tabs, press them in, pull it up. Now, if you're working on a V8, you might want to label these so you can keep really good track of them, but frankly, on the 4-cylinder here, we got a lot of room, and they're coming up off very simply. And we're ready to encourage this rail to come up. And you may need a big screwdriver, a small pry bar, just give it a little encouragement. That one came up very nicely. We're going to work it up out of here so we get access to our injectors. So, work it out. Patience is a virtue here. And there we go. And you know, by looking at it, you wouldn't really know that you've got a problem. But obviously, we've got a performance issue in that cylinder, and you got to keep in mind, think of that spray pattern we just saw. In a 4-cylinder motor, when you've got one cylinder performing that way in terms of fuel delivery, you're down at least 25% of your power. So that's a really big deal. So I like to make sure everything's clean here and replace these one at a time, backing any kind of dirt or contamination away from the hole. And then we've got our BWD replacement injectors. These are OE, but they're brand new. Everything, the pintle valve, everything is in great shape with these. And a little tip is these O-rings, you want to give them a little bit of lubrication going back down in so you don't fight this and take a chance on breaking it. What works really well for that? Dielectric gel. It's non-corrosive, it's not going to eat up any of these rubber O-rings. I'm pretty conservative with it, but I definitely want some on here to help our cause. 3 rubber O-rings, top, middle, bottom. Get it coated, work it around, Hands are clean, no dirt and contamination getting in there. Now we're going to install it back up into the fuel rail just like it came out, connector facing up. And we're going to follow this procedure across the other 4. You can kind of feel it and hear it pop in. Okay, we're installed and back in the rail. We'll repeat the procedure across the other 3 injectors, and this thing's going to be running like a champ. Now, if you want to see how the big boys do it and flow a lot of fuel, we'll join John in a minute over at Bernie's Speed Shop to see how they do it. But stay with us. More Tech Garage in a minute, presented by Advanced Auto Parts.